A new report seems to suggest that there's been an international cover-up around the origins of the coronavirus, that it did come from a lab, that people in American government and the WHO did know about it and chose to conceal it. Why would that be? And what are the implications of something this significant, globally significant, being concealed? How does it affect our trust in government going forward and the likelihood of such events happening again? The headline in the Washington Post in an article by Josh Rogan is new congressional report says COVID-19 likely emerged in Wuhan months earlier than originally thought. That's weird, isn't it? Because by now you've got your own timeline of how it individually and personally affected you, where you were, how you reacted at every phase, the initial excitement around vaccines, concerns around the story. Did it come from a lab? 19 months after the start of the pandemic, the Chinese government continues to actively thwart a real investigation into the origins of COVID-19. A new GOP congressional report alleges that Beijing was covering up the outbreak for months longer than previously assumed. I suppose what that feeds into is the idea that there is a mainstream dominant narrative and an ulterior narrative that is closer to the truth. Imagine how this plays into the ideas around the revelations of Edward Snowden, fears around increasing power of big tech and government, of suspicions and fears elsewhere in mandated government actions around the pandemic. It's very, I suppose, startling. And don't you start to get the sense you want to just sort of cut off? Like, I just don't want anything to do with this anymore. This is too mental. Can't we just go home? Like, have you ever gotten into trouble at a party or in a pub or in a bar when you're sort of a bit too young? Can't we just rub this all out? Can't we make it all go away? No, because this is all reality, and it's the US government and the Chinese government and powerful transnational bodies that are funded by the very institutions and organisations that they're set up to regulate. So good luck! The House of Foreign Affairs Committee released an 84-page addendum to their previously issued report on the origins of COVID. What kind of report was that? And it's another 84 pages. Put out the original report! Their new research focuses on whether the Wuhan Institute of Virology, as well as other labs in Wuhan, could have been the source of the outbreak. I mean, we scarcely need to rehash Jon Stewart's enjoyable analysis of the situation. The report also presents extensive evidence that the international community may need to revise its timeline of the outbreak. It's our belief that the virus leaked sometime in late August or early September, McCall said in a statement accompanying the release of the report. When they realised what happened, Chinese Communist Party officials and scientists at the WIV began frantically covering up the leak. But their cover-up was too late. The virus was already spreading through the megacity of Wuhan. In January 2020, the Chinese researchers reported that the first confirmed case of COVID-19 occurred in December 2019, some of which were linked to the seafood market in Wuhan, although not the earliest cases. Do you remember that? Do you remember having to look at crates in a market of mad-looking creatures and thinking, and it's sort of stoking the idea of oh God, they shouldn't be eating that. That's disgusting. No wonder there's problems. Meanwhile, there's an institute, a bigger problem, rather than sort of eating rare and somewhat beautiful and exotic animals, which as a vegan, I certainly wouldn't endorse, is that there's a lab messing around with viruses. In March 2020, China traced its first case back to November 17th, 2019. But since then, more evidence has emerged that suggests that the virus was circulating in Wuhan way before that time. As the committee's report notes, the Wuhan Institute of Virology took its main public virus database offline on September 12th, 2019. We're just going to take the old database offline now for a little while. Why is that? Nothing really. Couple of months, you'll find out. Watch this space. You ain't seen me, right? Dozens of athletes from several countries who attended the 2019 Military World Games in Wuhan in late October reported they came down with a COVID-like illness while they were in Wuhan. Although they wouldn't have described it as that at the time. This is a COVID-like illness. The committee report also references commercially available satellite imagery that shows significantly increased activity at the 6 Wuhan hospitals closest to the Wuhan Institute of Virology in September and October of 2019. It's not a very transparent situation we're dealing with, is it? The whole thing has got an element of play, deception, espionage that isn't very helpful when you have to persuade a global population to do different stuff, invasive stuff, change their attitude and perspectives. It's hard to get beyond that when approaching this subject. So what? So they took that stuff offline. The way the American government finds out what's true is by looking at satellite imaging. I don't want to sound terribly naive. I understand what, geopolitics is and that there are all sorts of competing interests when you're dealing with superpowers. But the fact is that all of those competing interests are constructs and conceptual, and the reality of human beings and the impact of this virus and the best way to deal with it and the way that it's been mobilized politically and the information that you're given and the information that's withheld, all of that has become more dominant than any reality. So no wonder there are competing narratives and people that completely mistrust the dominant one when the dominant one has already been proven to be quite malleable and has been adapted for expedience. The committee staff also unearthed an archived version of a contract competition for a new 1.3 million security service procurement project, which was issued by the Wuhan Institute of Virology on September 12th, the same day the virus database mysteriously went offline. So on that day, they started, we better look into some new security. Evidently, something mysterious, peculiar, and likely nefarious is going on. I can understand why people are willing to entertain conspiracy, because there is so much, it's so veiled, and there's been so much deception and dishonesty. And whenever a situation seems to benefit powerful interests, it often appears like that is the main reason for it to happen. If it's convenient to government, if it's convenient to big tech, if it's convenient to big pharma, it takes a real challenge to go, yeah, but that's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence that it's convenient to government, big pharma and big tech. 4 days later, the Wuhan Institute of Virology announced a new contract competition to completely renovate... What was going on? The Wuhan Institute of Virology announced a new contract competition to completely renovate its air conditioning system for 606 million. Hold on a minute. That's not a way to get an air conditioner. Roll up, ladies and gentlemen. Here's your chance to provide air conditioning. Clearly, a lot of shit was going on in September at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. No, we just decided at that time to get some new security, the totally new air conditioning. Mental. Both contract announcements were later scrubbed from the Chinese Ministry of Finance website. Get that off! Based on the material collected and analysed by the committee minority staff, the preponderance of evidence suggests that SARS-CoV-2 was accidentally released from what a mad accident. I've done some stupid things in my time. I feel quite bad. Like, if I give my kids a cup without a lid on it and then they spill it, I think, you idiot! You know now you've got to give it a lid with a cup. Oh no, now everyone's got coronavirus. Accidentally released from a Wuhan Institute of Virology lab sometime prior to September 12, 2019. Understanding the timeline of the outbreak is crucial to getting to the truth about the origins of the virus. The committee report accuses American scientists of deliberately working to further the Chinese government's cover-up by bullying other scientists who wanted to investigate the lab leak hypothesis. I think being bullied by a scientist.
Now listen, buddy boy, if you don't do that, I'm going to break your Bunsen burner, baby.
Who wanted to investigate a lab leak, misleading the world about the nature of the work the US scientists were doing in collaboration with Wuhan labs. The report singles out Peter Daszak, the head of US government-funded non-profit organisation EcoHealth Alliance, who awarded several sub-grants to the Wuhan Institute of Virology and worked closely for many years with their main bat coronavirus team. We've uncovered strong evidence to suggest Peter Daszak is the public face of a CCP disinformation campaign designed to suppress public discussion about a potential lab leak, the report states, pointing to emails between Daszak and other scientists the committee says was part of his effort to steer the narrative away from the Wuhan labs. Hey, what about them labs where they experiment on virology? Yeah, but all them wet markets, they've got bats over there. Oh, disgusting! Daszak was on the World Health Organization's study mission to China, which declared the lab leak hypothesis extremely unlikely. What's the point in having a study mission if you put people in the mission that have got vested interest? WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus later admitted that its team did not properly investigate the possibility of a lab accident origin and that more work needed to be done. What kind of mission is this? Right, we're going. What should we do? Just pop down the market and make an announcement. And the Institute of Virology? Oh, no, just have another look at the bats, I think. The Lancet Commission on COVID-19 removed Daszak from its team. Daszak, You can't rely on you. Get out. You're not in this. No, come on. Let's get back down those wet markets. I'm sure I can crack it this time. No, we're going to really focus on the lab after Daszak filed an updated conflict of interest statement about his collaboration with the Wuhan labs. You know, thinking about it, I shouldn't have ever been in that committee because I actually earn money from that. Does that affect? And I also hate bats and wet markets. The new GOP congressional report contains no smoking guns that will settle the debate, but presents a convincing case that a lab leak theory must be investigated thoroughly. Without investigating the Wuhan labs, it's getting so close to saying Wu-Tang Clan now. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Wuhan labs and all US collaboration with them. There's no way to claim that we've done our best to learn how the pandemic started so we can prevent the next one. Uncovering the truth is crucial to our national security and our public health. And I would add to that, to our sense of trust and the idea of transparency, which, let's face it now, is so eroded and so abstract. We just live with and accept that you can't trust the government, that it's normal. Most people now just can't even be bothered. Like, can you? You've sort of, oh yeah, I've heard now, it probably came from a lab. That was bloody obvious in the first place. Of course it didn't come from a wet market. Of course the government lies to you. Of course they're spying on you. Of course you can't trust them. At what point then do you begin to question whether or not there is a possibility for alternative systems, or the process of democracy itself isn't working and that you deserve something better? I think we're like, like sort of, I don't know, prisoners of war, kidnap victims that somehow that have consumed so much institutional abuse. We don't think that we're worthy of any different way of living. Remember that this stuff boils down to human beings and human choices, and that there's always the potential for change. Part of the systemic intransigence is the sort of assumption that it's indefatigable, their assumption and ours, that this cannot be changed. This is just the way things are. The way to overthrow that is to begin with, well, you know, we can change reality whenever we want to. We can completely reorganise it, first through non-cooperation with the existing systems and through the concurrent focus on creating new ideas, or at least investigating existing ideas to see how they could be differently mobilised, incorporating our understanding of technology and reality. And then when undertaking that task, recognising that what we're competing with on the basis of this story alone is a bunch of jackasses. Anyway, look, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, why don't you comment below, and please become a subscriber. Share this stuff around if you don't mind. And if you like my stuff, subscribe to my mailing list over at russellbrand.com. We'll update you, we'll get you, I do live shows, I do loads and loads of stuff. If you want, you can listen to my podcast, Under the Skin. I do one every week. It's on a network called Luminary, and you can get it off Apple. Also there, I do a thing called Above the Noise. If you need to meditate now, or need to focus on your well-being, watch this video on my side channel, which you should also subscribe to. And if you like this kind of stuff, watch this video, which is along these lines. Thanks very much. Stay with us.